The November wind cut through downtown Chicago with enough force to make people pull their coats tighter as they hurried toward warm office buildings. Sarah Mitchell stepped off the city bus, clutching the hand of her 8-year-old son, Noah. He wore a blue backpack stuffed with library books, colored pencils, and a peanut butter sandwich she had packed in a hurry. Sarah looked at her phone. 7:46 a.m. She was supposed to be at her desk by 8. Normally, Noah would have been at school or with Mrs. Jenkins, the retired neighbor who watched him before classes began. But life had taken an unexpected turn before sunrise. At 5:50 that morning, Sarah's phone rang. Mrs. Jenkins had slipped on her icy front steps while collecting the morning newspaper and fractured her ankle. She was calling from the emergency room to tell Sarah she couldn't watch Noah. Sarah immediately started making calls. Her sister lived 3 states away. Her closest friend was traveling for work. Every licensed daycare nearby was full. The school's Before Care program had no openings. One by one, every possibility disappeared. She stared at the clock. She had worked at Harper & Wells Financial Services for nearly 4 years. She had never been late, never missed a deadline, never received a disciplinary warning. She couldn't afford to lose the job that paid their rent. With no other option, she knelt beside Noah. "I need your help today." He looked up with wide brown eyes. "Can I come with you? Just for a few hours. I'll be quiet." "I know you will." He smiled. Sarah wished she shared his confidence. Harper & Wells occupied 3 floors of a modern glass tower overlooking the Chicago River. The office buzzed with phones ringing, keyboards clicking, and employees preparing for another busy day. When Sarah stepped inside holding Noah's hand, several coworkers noticed immediately. Melissa from accounting walked over. "Everything okay?" Sarah quietly explained what had happened. Melissa glanced toward the empty conference room. "Keep him in conference room B. Hardly anyone uses it before lunch." Sarah thanked her. Inside the conference room, Noah unpacked his books. "I'll stay here." "You promise?" "I promise." Sarah kissed the top of his head before returning to her desk. For nearly 3 hours, everything went perfectly. Noah finished his math homework. He read 2 chapters of his favorite adventure novel. One employee brought him apple juice. Another found a puzzle book. Sarah answered client calls, completed reports, and almost convinced herself the day would end without incident. Then the elevator doors opened. Regional Director Richard Collins entered the office with 2 executives from corporate headquarters. Conversations stopped. Everyone knew Collins. He believed rules existed for one reason: to be followed. No exceptions. As the group toured the department, a sudden crash echoed from conference room B. A box of colored pencils had fallen from the table. Collins stopped walking. "What was that?" No one answered. He pushed open the conference room door. Noah looked up from the floor. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Collins slowly turned toward Sarah. "Whose child is this?" Sarah stood. "Mine." "Why is he in this office?" "My childcare fell through this morning. I couldn't. I asked why he is here. I had no one else." His expression remained cold. "You are aware of company policy?" "Yes." "And you chose to ignore it." "I didn't know what else to do." Collins folded his arms. "If we make exceptions for one employee, every employee will expect exceptions." Sarah took a step forward. "I've worked here for years. I've never broken a rule. I've never even been written up." This was one emergency. The executives remained silent. Collins looked toward human resources. "I'll need termination paperwork." Sarah felt as though the room had disappeared beneath her feet. "Please. I'm asking for one chance. I'll never let it happen again." Collins shook his head. "Our policy is clear. So is my decision." 30 minutes later, Sarah placed framed family photos into a cardboard box while coworkers watched helplessly. Melissa quietly slipped 2 grocery store gift cards between the folders inside the box. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Sarah hugged her. "Thank you." Noah walked beside his mother toward the elevator. He looked up. "Mom." She smiled even though her heart was breaking. "Yes." "Is this my fault?" She immediately knelt in front of him. "No. It was never your fault. You hear me? He nodded slowly. You didn't do anything wrong. Outside, cold rain poured onto the sidewalks. Sarah held Noah's hand as they walked toward the bus stop. She had no idea how she would pay next month's rent. But she refused to let her son carry guilt that belonged to someone else's decision. That evening, after Noah fell asleep, Sarah spread every bill across the kitchen table. Rent, utilities, car insurance, school supplies, medical expenses. She opened her laptop and started applying for jobs. Receptionist, administrative assistant, office coordinator, customer service. By 2 a.m, she had submitted 32 applications. She closed the computer with tired eyes. Tomorrow had to be better. It wasn't. Days became weeks. Interview after interview ended with polite smiles and promises to call. Most never did. One hiring manager finally told her the truth. We contacted Harper and Wells. Sarah looked down. They confirmed your employment dates. And they also confirmed you violated company policy. Sarah understood immediately. She wasn't just unemployed. She had been labeled a risk. Months passed. Savings disappeared. Sarah sold her second car, canceled streaming services, skipped buying new clothes. Yet every evening she made dinner feel normal. For Noah, they played board games, read books, finished homework together. He never knew how many nights she cried after he went to bed. 3 months later, a small nonprofit organization called Bright Horizons Community Services invited her for an interview. The office was modest. The furniture was old. The executive director, Linda Harper, welcomed Sarah with a warm smile. Halfway through the interview, Sarah decided to tell the truth. I should explain why I left my previous employer. She described the babysitter canceling, bringing Noah to work, losing her job. When she finished, Linda remained silent. Finally, she asked one question. If it happened again today, what would you do? Sarah answered without hesitation. I'd bring my son. Linda smiled. So would I. Sarah looked surprised. Linda leaned back. We hire people, not robots. If someone works hard every day, one family emergency shouldn't define their career. Sarah felt tears welling in her eyes. Linda slid an offer letter across the desk. The salary isn't as high as your previous position, but you'll never have to apologize for being a mother. Sarah accepted immediately. Over the next 5 years, Bright Horizons became more than a workplace. It became a family. Sarah organized housing assistance programs, created scholarship initiatives, built partnerships with schools and local businesses. She earned promotion after promotion until she became director of community programs. Employees trusted her. Families respected her. Noah, now 13, often volunteered beside her during food drives and holiday events. One evening while loading donated backpacks into a van, Noah smiled. You know, I think getting fired was the best thing that ever happened. Sarah laughed. I didn't think that at the time. Neither did I. But if you hadn't lost that job, you wouldn't have helped all these people. Sarah wrapped an arm around his shoulders. Maybe life has a strange way of opening new doors. She had no idea how true those words would soon become. Just 2 weeks later, Bright Horizons announced it had been acquired by one of the largest community development organizations in the country. A new CEO would arrive from headquarters to meet every employee personally. Rumors spread quickly. Would departments be eliminated? Would salaries change? Would managers lose their jobs? No one knew. Sarah prepared reports late into the evening before the CEO's visit. She wanted to make a good first impression. What she didn't know was that the new CEO carried a childhood memory that would forever change both of their lives. The following Tuesday, every employee at Bright Horizons arrived early. Fresh flowers decorated the reception desk. The conference room had been prepared with coffee, pastries, and presentation folders. Nervous conversations filled the hallways as people wondered what the company's new leadership would bring. Corporate acquisitions often meant one thing: layoffs. Sarah had experienced enough uncertainty to know not to expect promises. She simply focused on making sure her team's reports were complete. At exactly 9 o'clock, the elevator doors opened. A tall man in his early 40s stepped out wearing a navy blue suit with no entourage except a single executive assistant. His name was Daniel Carter. Instead of walking directly into the conference room, he stopped at every desk, introducing himself with a warm smile. "Good morning. I'm Daniel. It's nice to finally meet you." Employees exchanged surprised looks. This wasn't how CEOs usually behaved. Most entered with speeches. Daniel started with conversations. After greeting everyone individually, he stood at the front of the conference room. "I've spent the last 3 weeks reviewing financial reports, community impact studies, and employee surveys," he began. "The numbers are impressive. But numbers don't build organizations. People do." He smiled around the room. "My goal isn't simply to manage this company. My goal is to protect the people who make it matter." The room relaxed. Then department leaders were invited to introduce themselves. When Sarah stood, Daniel looked at her for several seconds. His expression changed. Not recognition exactly. More like a memory trying to return. "You oversee community programs?" he asked. "Yes. I've read wonderful things about your work." "Thank you." He nodded thoughtfully before moving on. Yet throughout the meeting, Sarah noticed him glancing toward her every so often, as though trying to place her face. After the presentation ended, Daniel's assistant quietly approached. "Ms. Mitchell, Mr. Carter would appreciate a few minutes of your time." Sarah's stomach tightened. Coworkers gave sympathetic smiles. Melissa, now one of her closest friends, whispered, "I'm sure it's nothing." Sarah hoped she was right. She followed the assistant into a quiet conference room overlooking the Chicago skyline. Daniel stood by the window. When the door closed, he turned. "I hope I haven't made you nervous." Sarah laughed softly. Whenever the CEO asks to speak privately, people tend to imagine the worst. "I understand." He motioned toward a chair. "Please sit." For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Daniel asked a question she never expected. "Were you once employed by Harper & Wells Financial Services?" Sarah's heart skipped. "Yes. About 5 years ago?" "That's right." "And—" he hesitated. "Were you dismissed because you brought your young son to work during a childcare emergency?" Sarah stared at him. She had never included that story on her resume. She had rarely spoken about it outside close friends. "How do you know that?" Daniel smiled gently. "Because 30 years ago, my mother lost her job for exactly the same reason." Sarah listened quietly. "I was 8 years old. My father had died the year before. My mother couldn't find childcare during a snowstorm. So she brought me to the factory where she worked." He looked toward the window. "The plant manager fired her before lunch. I still remember standing beside her in the parking lot. I asked if losing her job was my fault." Sarah felt tears forming. Daniel continued. "My mother knelt in front of me and said, 'No job is worth letting a child believe they're a burden.'" Sarah covered her mouth. "Those were almost the exact words I said to Noah." Daniel nodded. Good parents often say the same things. They protect their children, even when they're hurting. He reached into his briefcase and removed an old photograph. A young woman stood beside a smiling little boy outside a modest apartment building. "I carry this picture everywhere. It's a reminder of the leader I never want to become." Daniel explained how his mother worked nights cleaning office buildings before attending accounting classes during the day. She eventually started a small bookkeeping business from their apartment. Over the years, it grew into a respected financial consulting firm. When Daniel finished college, he joined the company. Together, they expanded it into a nationwide organization focused on acquiring mission-driven nonprofits. "My mother taught me something I'll never forget," he said. "The true measure of a company isn't how it treats people on their best day. It's how it treats them on their hardest one." Sarah smiled through tears. "She sounds remarkable." She was. Daniel paused. "She passed away 2 years ago." "I'm so sorry." "Thank you." He smiled. "Everything I do as a leader is my way of honoring her." Daniel opened a folder and slid it across the table. "I've spent the last month reviewing every department. I've also spoken with dozens of employees. They all described you the same way." compassionate, dependable, someone who solves problems without asking for recognition. Sarah looked down at the folder. Inside was an employment agreement. She frowned. I don't understand. Our organization has never had a vice president of employee and family support. We're creating one. And I'd like you to lead it. Sarah looked up in disbelief. Me? You? The position would oversee employee wellness, emergency childcare assistance, family leave policies, mental health resources, and scholarship programs for employees' children across every office in the country. The salary was nearly double her current income. The benefits included college tuition assistance for Noah, flexible scheduling, expanded retirement contributions, and funding for new family support initiatives. I can't believe this. I hoped you wouldn't. Daniel smiled. I want you to build the kind of workplace both our mothers deserved. Sarah's hands trembled. I don't know what to say. Say yes. She laughed through tears. Then yes. Absolutely yes. 3 months later, Sarah stood before more than 600 employees during the company's annual leadership conference. She introduced a new program called the Family First Initiative. Emergency childcare grants, backup caregiver services, paid family emergency leave, flexible scheduling for single parents and caregivers. No employee would ever have to choose between caring for a child and keeping a paycheck. The room erupted in applause. Many employees wiped away tears. Several later admitted they had hidden family struggles for years because they feared losing their jobs. Now they finally felt seen. A year passed. The Family First Initiative became one of the company's defining programs. Employee retention reached record highs. Applications nearly doubled. Business magazines highlighted the organization as one of America's best places to work. Taller than she was, volunteering with younger children at a science activity table. She smiled. The day she thought she had lost everything had quietly become the beginning of something far greater. Not just for her, but for countless families she would never meet. Sometimes the greatest surprise in life isn't a promotion or a new title. Sometimes it's discovering that your hardest day became the reason someone else never has to experience the same pain. And for Sarah Mitchell, that was the greatest success she could have ever imagined.